Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Right, this is another follow-up video, and I've been doing a lot of them lately. Sorry about that, but basically what it means is I might not go into all the background of what I'm going to talk about today, but you do need to go to the links in the description box which will discuss that background, because, you know, rather than repeating myself all over again, you know, which I can't be bothered to do. You know, you can, if you've not already seen these videos I've made before and these articles I've written and the radio shows I've done, then you can find out for yourself. It's much more fun that way. Anyway, this is another video about the skeptocracy, and I made a video a little while before about the skeptocracy, and it's about me as well and my own relationship with the skeptic movement, because as I explained in previous videos, I actually I've had a good sort of like friendly relationship with the skeptic movement. I've attended skeptic events like the TAM London conference. I go to skeptic in a pub events too, like the one in Oxford, sometimes the one in London. I'm on the mailing list for the one in Oxford. But I found that my relationship has changed with the skeptic movement lately. And the reason it's changed is because of a series of events which I've spoken about before. But another one has come along. All right. These events are things such as Tedgate, which again, link in the description box, will tell you all about that. There's the issue with the Steiner schools, which I've also spoken about before, and the issue and the problems with Rebecca Watson, which I'll go into later in more detail, and the conduct of members of the skeptic movement. But I think most of all, this most recent event that has occurred has confirmed something that I've long suspected, and that is that members of the skeptic movement seem to have a very, very naive and very, very irrational and deluded view of themselves and their own movement. Now, I best better explain what's happened. What I've done is I've written an article about this. I'll just show it to you. The article is this one I've written on Hapanwo Voice. It's an article about this lady here, Psychic Sally. Sally Morgan, her name is, and she is a medium who practices regularly in churches, but she's also gone on the theatre circuit. She's become very, very successful as a performance medium. Now, what happened with this lady, I think, has profound implications for the skeptic movement. I wrote about it here on Hapanwo Voice. You can read about it there. Now, what happened was she was going around Ireland on a tour, and she performed in a theatre in Dublin. And a number of members of the audience called a local radio station, and they said that they heard somebody in a room behind the theatre, in one of the control rooms behind the theatre, talking into what it sounded like they were talking to Sally, and they were telling her, giving her information. They're basically saying things which she would then repeat on stage, as if they were giving her background intelligence on members of the audience, which she's not supposed to know about. Well, because she's a psychic, she's supposed to know these things anyway. What's this? I'm going to take off these earphones. It's ridiculous. I look like I'm at Nuremberg. Anyway, so what happened was, you know, this hearsay, which is what it was reported in the skeptic media, but something very strange happened. It was kind of like, I should give you a bit of background, because what they suspected she was doing was pulling a pop-off, basically. And this means, sounds a bit rude, that, but what it actually means is, it refers to a Christian televangelist called Peter Popoff, who in the 1980s was caught red-handed doing exactly what they were suspecting Sally of doing. What happened was Peter Popoff performed in front of huge audiences on television. He made an awful lot of money with his healing sessions, and he appeared to have telepathic or psychic abilities. But what happened was James Randi went in the audience with a radio scanner. I mean, credit where credit's due. You know, he did catch him out generally cheating, and what he found out was that Peter Popoff was getting information on the people in the audience he was supposedly giving messages from angels about, from forms that the people in the audience had filled in, and they were sent backstage, and somebody was backstage reading them and giving him live information via a radio connection to an earpiece. He had a radio earpiece in, and he could hear someone backstage giving him this information. James Randi, with his radio scanner, intercepted those transmissions and basically caught him with his pants down. Now, the suspicion was that Sally was doing the same thing. The problem was, now, what I would have done in that situation, I'd said, right, I'll get my radio scanner if I was a skeptic. But even if I wasn't, you know, I would get my radio scanner, find out where she's going to be performing next, buy a ticket, get into the audience and try and pick up the radio transmissions that Sally was using. The problem was, none of these skeptics who admire James Randi and know, you know, and support what he did against Peter Popoff, none of these skeptics did that. What they did instead was, they immediately rebranded this hearsay as fact and began reporting it as fact in the skeptic media. The problem was, it didn't stop with the skeptic media. Paul Zenon, who's a skeptic and magician, as magicians tend to be, wrote an article in the Daily Mail basically accusing Sally of pulling a Popoff and saying this is what she was doing. Well, the result from this was that this was, unfortunately, was a defamation of character because they didn't have any evidence. Not only that, but Sally received death threats and other threats. And now that is a topic I want to come on to later as well, because that comes up later on in this film. Anyway, Psychic Sally sued the Daily Mail, and I'm pleased to say she won. She won £125,000 in damages, richly deserved, plus costs. Good. Now, a radio show called Righteous Indignation, which was a skeptic radio show that I used to listen to, it's now defunct. That also covered the event, slightly more cautiously, I must say. They didn't make any actual accusations, but I actually posted a comment on that radio show's comments box, warning people not to jump to conclusions. I was warning them exactly what I wanted to warn people not to do. In other words, what Paul Zenon went and did, accused Sally of something without any evidence. Now, it seemed in this case I out-skepticked the skeptics. Now, there's been many rather pathetic attempts to mitigate this. I mean, because this is really an absolute disaster for them. The problem is they don't know it, and I'll come to that again in a minute as well. I was astonished at the eagerness they had to denounce her as doing what Peter Popoff did without trying to gather any evidence for what she was doing, what Peter Popoff did, as I explained. Now, there's been all kinds of sort of like strange things they've been saying now. I mean, skeptics have been saying things like, they've been trying to mitigate it with really absurd platitudes like, oh, come on, look, which is more likely? Is she talking to dead people, or has she got a radio earpiece in? Well, look, firstly, that statement is loaded with logical fallacies. But secondly, you can't go to court with that. You can't go to court and say, well, look, I'm accusing this woman because I think it's more likely she's using a radio earpiece. I don't know she's using a radio earpiece. I don't have any evidence, even though evidence of that wouldn't be hard to gather, but I just couldn't be bothered to gather the evidence. I thought I'd just go and accuse her anyway, because on the balance of probabilities, that's what she's doing. Case dismissed. Why is it these people, these skeptics who claim to be the last word in science and reason and evidence, are so bad at applying evidence? This is all part of their self-delusion, I think. Anyway, I was quite interested to find out what the skeptic media actually had to say about this, because I do study the skeptic media quite closely and skeptic social networking. And one of the biggest social networking facilities in the skeptic movement is the James Randi Educational Foundation Forum, a very, very big active forum. It's on the scale of, above top secret, but it's skeptic. Thousands of members, multiple posts. So I went in there, I went in and put in the search box, I put Sally Morgan, and I got one thread, just one short thread. Sally Morgan, a lesson to be learned. And someone, to his credit, called Steve001, has posted an article written by Martin Robbins. Now, Martin Robbins is one of the few, in fact, he's the only major skeptic who has got to grips with this debacle. He's written an article saying, here's the highlight: skeptics shouldn't have lined up with the Mail to call Psychic Sally a fraud. We shouldn't be afraid to tell people the full story. what a great pity about the legal battle between the Daily Mail and psychic Sally Morgan was that someone had to win. The Mail's humiliating failure to outsmart her was spoiled by her vindication in the courts. What's more galling is she deserved to win. And this is the article he wrote in the New Statesman by Martin Robbins. Well, well done, Martin. Congratulations. You know, something has clicked in your brain that all other skeptics have failed to even understand. What's happened to my computer? Oh, that's it. All right, anyway, this is Steve 101 is the only person on the James Randi forum to bring this up. Anyway, it did start a thread here. Anyway, it's very few people seem to want to say anything about Sally Morgan, and this, as I was saying, they seem to be a bit unwilling to face up to it. So the conversation very quickly went off into more general areas of spiritualism and the sceptical attitude towards spiritualism. I must say, it became rather disturbing. For instance, the famous Cash here said, anyone claiming to be psychic is one or both of only two states, a con artist or mentally unwell. Protect the feeble-minded. Join the campaign to change our stupid laws which actually condone legalised theft. Email your MP requesting the issue to be raised in Parliament. Prohibit these thieves for advertising or performing. What he says later on here, and in a post down here, is protect the feeble-minded, jail these charlatans. In other words, put psychics in jail. That's what he wants to do. He wants it to become an offence to be a psychic, or to say you're a psychic, which can cause, which can get you in jail, basically. But someone else said something which is even scarier. Where is it? Here we go. Me's piece says here, I think someone accuses a psychic of fraud and lying. If someone accuses a psychic of fraud and lying, it should be up to the psychic to prove that they are not. Not the other way round. And now this is scary. What Me's piece is saying is that if I see a psychic practicing in a spiritualist church or in theatre, I should immediately just make up some accusation against them. I could say, well, let's see, she's been searching through people's rubbish to try and find their paperwork so she knows about them, like Emma Lamarckine used to do. I've got no evidence she did that, but she's got to prove she didn't. And if she can't prove she didn't, then she should be automatically convicted. I mean, there was a guy actually called Porter Boy, who's a very good member. He says underneath here, he's a skeptic, but he says here at one point, does this mean if I'm a journalist, I can write an article specifically accusing a medium of, and he raises the same points I do, and he says here, this is a majorly dangerous legal reform you're talking about. Well done, Porter Boy, that's absolutely right. And he also challenges the famous Cash. He says here, as a person who used to believe in spiritualism and all other kinds of things that go bump in the night, I have some insight into how psychic fans think and feel. I can say with some confidence that your approach will be counterproductive. Using the strong arm of the law to force psychics out of business would create 1,000 Helen Duncans. Spiritualism would become an underground guerrilla force with skeptics as the helmeted riot police. The psychics would receive a lot of public support. This is a civil rights issue. Well done, Porter Boy. It gets worse, actually. I mean, there's another issue brought up. Someone called Azrael5 says, I don't believe she had death threats. Why don't you believe that, Azrael5? Do you just think skeptics wouldn't do that kind of thing? Well, yes, they would. As I said earlier on, I'm going to bring this up again. When a person in Australia called Meryl Dorey spoke out against vaccination and tried to make people aware of the dangers of vaccination, she was sent pictures of dead bodies and threats of rape, mutilation and murder. Now what's more, Rebecca Watson was sent the same threats. Now Rebecca Watson is actually a skeptic herself. She runs a Skeptic website and she's a presenter of a radio show called Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. She was sent death threats from other skeptics, and again, look in the description box for background to this. This is unbelievable. So Azrael 5, why don't you believe she had death threats? You see, this is what I mean by they've got their heads up their arses and they can't see how bloody terrible their own institution is. And Porter Boy, I'm glad to say, tackles him as well. Porter Boy he's commented a lot on this thread, Porter Boy. I don't know who he is, but he's called Porter Boy. But, you know, like I said, there are some skeptics who are quite with it and quite understand this, like Porter Boy. I don't know who Porter Boy is, you know, but he somehow sounds familiar to me. Anyway, what this is basically all about is that my relationship to the skeptic movement has changed, and I think the skeptic movement itself is changing, and I think that a fundamental change that has come over it in the last year is that it is now having to defend itself. Previously, the skeptic movement has always been the accuser. It's always been non-skeptics like me who've had to defend myself against skeptics, parapsychologists, ghost hunters, spiritualists, believers in what they call them believers, but people who've come to the conclusion there is such things as paranormal, there is such things as conspiracy theories, there is such things as all the other things that skeptics don't like, okay? And it's always, up till now, it's always been a position where those people have said what they want and the skeptics have challenged them, and we've had to defend ourselves. Now it's the other way around. The tables have turned. It's the skeptics who are having to defend themselves from us because of their conduct, and because of the fact that their whole movement is basically, it's so bad in the various ways that I've described. And as I said, various things have led up to this, like Tedgate, the Rebecca Watson scandal, the Steiner School's events, things like that. And the incident with Sally Morgan is the most recent in a series of this. Now, Steve Trueblue has discussed this on his channel, Kimbo99, and he's done a good job himself, and, you know, hats off to him. And I've got to add it. I've got to bring in my own sort of spin on this, you know, because I think that, you know, the skeptic movement we may be seeing the final days of the skeptic movement, as Rupert Sheldrake and Peter Fenwick have predicted. It may be this is a fad that is going away. That, you know, reductionist materialist obsession is being proved false, and that the fall of the House of Skeptic, which is the title of a book actually. Whose name I can't remember the title, but Steve talks about it on his Kimbo99 channel. The fall of the House of Skeptic is a symptom, I think, of these falls and these cracks in the foundation of obsessive reductionist materialism. Another book I heartily recommend is this one. It's called Randy's Prize by Robert McLuhan. Subtitle: What the Skeptics Say About the Paranormal, Why They Are Wrong, and Why It Matters. This book is a massive and comprehensive demolition of the skeptic position. It's a critique of the skeptic movement from outside it, and it comprehensively, thoroughly, and very very rationally it's very very dismissive indeed, and it's well worth a read. I think my biggest sense at the moment is a sense of relief. I actually am quite pleased with the turn of events, although I feel sorry for people like Sally. I feel sorry for Rebecca Watson too. You know, she's a skeptic, but she's also a vulnerable young woman who's been threatened with all the things that Meryl Dorey was threatened with, which leads me to believe that the people who attacked Meryl Dorey are the same people who attacked Rebecca. The same with the Tedgate. I mean, Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake have not missed. They have very, very wisely capitalised on this, and I think they, you know, deep down, I think they are quite pleased this has happened too. And I think it is good this has happened because it has caused the skeptic movement to show its true colours. The fact that so few of them are discussing it on the James Randi forum, the JREF forum, again, it shows how blinkered and ivory towered these people are. And the thing is, when they're like that, it's showing their irrelevance. When they're unable to sort of like relate to the real world, then it's very, very hard to take them seriously. So in a sense, the very fact that they don't understand what a huge clanger they've dropped is the fact they don't understand much else. Now, from my personal perspective, I mean, like I said, I've always been a person who has tried to engage the skeptic movement in a kind of debate. I've written reviews of skeptic books, skeptic events, things like that. I now feel very differently. I feel, in a sense, it's heartening to know where the battle lines are drawn. It's not a debate anymore, it's a fight. And I know what side I'm on. And I know I'm on the winning side. And I think you cannot debate with people who go to a woman like Sally Morgan and call her all kinds of names under the sun and threaten to kill her because somebody in a theatre in Ireland phoned a TV studio and said, "Oh, I can hear voices at the back, she's doing this." It makes a joke out of the whole idea of what they say about themselves, their own rhetoric, their own self-description. A skeptic is one, this is from House of Skeptics in the Pub, if I can remember the entire quote. A skeptic is one who applies science, reason and experiment to all claims and apportions their reality on the outcome of those experiments and is aware of the pitfalls of reason and the ability to deceive both others and themselves, or somewhere along that line. That's not a description, it's a slogan, and it's a slogan that's starting to echo very, very thin with these outcomes and these events. So, in summary, I could say, that I think we're entering a new era. We're entering into a new era where there won't be skeptics, or they'll be more and more marginalised. There'll be fewer and fewer of them, and they're going to be more and more marginalised and more irrelevant to discussion. So I'd say to the skeptics, get your heads out of your arses, look at what you're doing. And start behaving like real skeptics, which is, in other words, skeptics with a C, not with a K. Skeptics with a C are always welcome in the paranormal community. I consider myself a skeptic with a C. A skeptic with a C is someone who actually does what these skeptic slogans say, which the skeptics don't do. To be a skeptic with a K is an ideology. It's best described as a mindset which holds the idea that paranormal, conspiracy, anything else unusual like that is not true, and it's a belief which a skeptic will try to get together other skeptics and reinforce. Not through science, but through flannel and bluster, which is what they've been doing. So I look forward to the future. I really do, very, very much. And I hope you do too. Thanks for watching Hopanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.